I believe that you are not a criminal. You are, however, a killer. Can you imagine standing in a courtroom on trial for the events of your own wedding night and hearing a judge speak those exact words directly to you?
Let's dive right into this explainer. We're going to unpack the devastating sentencing of a groom whose wedding night ended in the unimaginable, the death of his best man. We'll be looking really closely at the raw transcript of this courtroom tragedy to understand exactly how the justice system measures intent against irreversible outcomes.
Section 1. The groom's desperate plea, a lack of intent, and a lost brother.
We began by examining the defendant's emotional testimony about the crime committed on August 30th, 2024. James Shyra stands before the judge, trying desperately to reconcile his identity with his actions. So, right away, notice how he frames his entire defense. He pleads to the court, "It was not intentional. That was my best friend." His core argument really heavily relied on that lack of intent, and this deep, almost brotherly bond he shared with the victim, Terry Taylor, who everybody affectionately called Turbo.
And their history really illustrates the true depth of that relationship. Reading through the transcript, James described how they literally spent every waking moment together. They rode dirt bikes and quads, they worked on cars together, and James explicitly stated he viewed Turbo as a big brother. He wanted the court to see the context of this unbreakable bond. This highlights exactly why James felt his actions, however tragic, just did not define him as a deliberate, cold-blooded murderer.
But to be fair, he doesn't just offer excuses here. While repeatedly stating it was an accident, James did formally accept responsibility. He told the court, "I accept full responsibility for my actions that night. I am truly sorry to the family." He offered his sincere remorse to Terry's grieving family, fully acknowledging that his words alone couldn't bring his best friend back.
Section 2. Intent versus outcome. The scales of justice. Now, moving to the heart of this explainer, we have a fascinating and heartbreaking legal clash. This perfectly captures the dueling perspectives that play in this courtroom. On one hand, we have James clinging to his clean history. No prior juvenile record, no misdemeanors, no felonies. He's leaning hard on the lack of intent and the raw grief of losing his best friend. But pitted against that, the judge. And the judge is anchoring entirely on the devastating outcome. The judge is focusing on the result, a physical death, fatherless children, and the stark reality that, regardless of intent, James murdered someone.
So to truly grasp the judge's perspective, we absolutely have to look at the immense gravity of the exact counts James ultimately faced. Count 1 is second-degree homicide. Count 2 is operating a vehicle with a revoked license causing death. And Count 3 is failure to stop at the scene of a death. Just the sheer weight of these charges makes it virtually impossible for the court to simply brush this off as a tragic accident.
In fact, the judge actually noted that the legal system had already shown James quite a bit of grace. Why? Well, the original situation could have resulted in an open murder charge. An open murder carries a potential sentence of life without parole. By amending it to second-degree murder, the court took that possibility of life without parole completely off the table, which the judge very firmly reminded the defense of during the proceedings.
Section 3. The judge's stern verdict. A consequence for a lost life?
Here we see exactly how the judge systematically dismantles the defendant's plea for leniency. The focus shifts entirely to the consequences of a lost life. The judge swiftly cut through James's attempts to distance himself from the label of a criminal. When James argued the charge didn't define him, the judge snapped back with the words we heard earlier. The fact that there's a person who is no longer here means that you are a killer. You killed someone. It's a sobering reframing. It focuses entirely on the physical loss of life and essentially pushes intent completely to the side.
The judge then laid out some incredibly harsh realities. First, the court had reviewed the footage of the incident, which the judge described as shocking to say the least. Now, while the judge did acknowledge and even credit James for eventually turning himself in, he forcefully reminded him of the collateral damage. His actions resulted in fatherless children. Furthermore, the judge pointed out that James is young, he's just 24 years old. That means he'll eventually get out and have lots of time left in his own life. The victim, Terry Taylor, he does not have that luxury.
And that leads to one of the absolute most powerful and, frankly, chilling moments in the entire transcript. The defense had argued that James will, quote, have to live with this for the rest of his life, while the judge delivered this haunting reality check right back. The key word in that sentence is live. There is someone who is no longer living. Wow, it completely neutralized the defense's attempt to use James's ongoing guilt as some sort of adequate punishment.
Section 4. Calculating the final sentence. Real-time legal decoding.
So, jumping into the final minutes of this transcript, we literally get to watch the chaotic, real-time legal mechanics play out. The emotional weight of the courtroom just suddenly collides with strict legal math. First, the judge sentences James to 30 years to life. Then, almost immediately, the judge says strike that and amends the sentence, because, as it turns out, the court cannot legally issue a 30 years to life sentence in this specific context. Okay, so he changes it to 30 to 40 years. But wait, it doesn't stop there. As they're processing the paperwork, someone points out another error, forcing the judge to amend it a third and final time to 30 to 45 years.
Now you might be wondering, why did that last change happen? It was all because of what's known as the 2/3 rule. This is a legal sentencing guideline discussed right there in the transcript, which requires the maximum sentence to be proportionally aligned with the minimum sentence. Since the minimum was set at 30 years, 2/3 math dictates the maximum had to be adjusted. So that shift from 40 to 45 years, it happened on the fly specifically to comply with this rigid legal framework.
All right, so once the math was finally corrected, these became the finalized concrete numbers dictating the rest of James Shyra's foreseeable future. Count 1 resulted in 30 to 45 years. Counts 2 and 3 resulted in 10 to 15 years each. The judge ordered all counts to run concurrently, meaning they're served at the same time, and James was given credit for the 618 days he had already served.
The hearing then wrapped up with some brief administrative details. The judge confirmed with the victim's family that no financial restitution was ordered, and finally some minor corrections were made to the pre-sentence investigation report, just fixing the defendant's middle name from Stephen to his true middle name, James Douglas. After those quick bureaucratic updates, James was officially remanded.
Section 5. Conclusion. The price of a life.
As we wrap up this explainer, we're really left weighing the devastating emotional toll of this case against the cold, hard mechanics of the courtroom. We saw a man pleading for his character, and a legal system prioritizing the physical loss of a victim above absolutely all else. It's a tragedy that leaves us with a profound question. How does the justice system actually measure the price of a life taken without intent? Where exactly is the line between a horrific, unintentional accident between best friends and the unyielding demand for legal consequence? It's an incredibly heavy thought to process, but understanding these raw transcripts helps us see exactly how the scales of justice balance out in real time. Thanks for joining me, and I really hope this explainer helped clarify the profound complexities of this tragic case.